My name is Eliza. The band stopped playing. My father's voice cut through the laughter. Eliza? What are you doing here? You weren't invited. The whole room turned. My heart cracked, but that night, I decided to make them pay for every ounce of humiliation they poured on me. If you've ever been disrespected by the very people who were supposed to love you most, this story is for you. Hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because what started as heartbreak at a family party ended in poetic, unforgettable revenge. And for as long as I can remember, I've been the background character in my own family story. I was the quiet achiever, the responsible one. My parents, Margaret and Dennis, raised 3 kids, my older brother, Chris, the golden child who could do no wrong, my younger sister, Lily, the baby everyone adored, and then there was me, the one who filled the gaps, picked up the pieces, and kept the peace. Growing up, praise was rationed, and somehow, I never qualified. When Chris got a scholarship, there was a banner across the driveway. When Lily made the cheer squad, my mom threw her a dinner party. When I got accepted into law school? They said, "That's nice, honey." No banner. No dinner. Just silence. But I didn't need their validation. I learned early that independence was my weapon. I worked 2 part-time jobs through college, graduated with honors, and built my career from scratch. By 32, I was a successful attorney at one of Chicago's top firms, earning more than both my parents combined. Still, no matter how much I achieved, they never saw me. Or worse, they pretended not to. It was my parents' 40th wedding anniversary, and I wanted to do something meaningful, something that might finally make them proud. So I planned a grand celebration. I hired an event planner, booked the elegant Marriott Grand Ballroom, ordered a 3-tier cake with their initials in gold, and even had their favorite jazz band flown in from New Orleans. Every detail was perfect, because I wanted it to be. It wasn't just a party. It was my way of saying, "See? I love you. I value you. I'm here." The total cost? $25,000. All from my own pocket. The night before the event, I dropped off the final check with the planner, a sweet woman named Caroline. She smiled and said, "Your parents are going to cry happy tears tomorrow." I thought so too. I arrived early to help the staff set up elegant silver tablecloths, ivory roses, crystal glassware that caught the light like tiny stars. Everything shimmered. I could already imagine my parents' smiles when they walked in. But when the guests began arriving, I noticed something strange. No one greeted me. They looked at me, confused, hesitant. Some even whispered. Then I saw my parents walk in. My mother wore a champagne-colored gown, and my father looked sharp in his tux. They were glowing, until their eyes met mine. They froze. Then my father's voice cut through the music. "Eliza? What are you doing here? You weren't invited." Laughter stopped. The band went silent. Every head turned toward me. I blinked, thinking I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" I whispered. My mother's face hardened. "Eliza, we thought we made it clear. This is a family event. You made things awkward last Christmas, and we didn't want a repeat." Awkward? I had politely excused myself after Chris's wife mocked me for being single. Apparently, that made me toxic. My throat tightened. "But I stammered. I planned this. I paid for it." Dad's expression twisted into something cold. "You paid? Oh, Eliza, you must be confused. Chris handled the arrangements. Maybe you need to check your memory." I looked around, searching for someone, anyone, to confirm what I knew was true. But the guests just avoided my gaze. My siblings exchanged smirks. And at that moment, realization hit me like a slap. They had erased me from my own gift. I walked out before the tears could fall in front of them. Outside, the winter air burned my lungs. I sat in my car, shaking. I replayed their words over and over, "You weren't invited. I'd spent my life trying to earn their love. And in return, they'd stolen my kindness, my money, and my dignity, all in one night. For 2 days, I couldn't get out of bed. I ignored calls from friends, even my coworkers. I felt hollow, like everything I'd built was meaningless because the people I built it for didn't care. Then one morning, I got an email from Caroline, the event planner. She said, "Hey Eliza, I hope your family loved the party. Just confirming the final payment went through beautifully. You have such a generous heart." That's when the fog in my head cleared. I stared at that message and whispered, "They think I'll just let this go. No. Not this time. Not again." That moment lit something in me, a slow, burning resolve. They had humiliated me publicly, used my money, and painted me as the unstable one. But I wasn't unstable. I was done. If they wanted to act like I didn't exist, I'd give them a reason to wish I did. Because what was coming next would make their perfect little image collapse from the inside out. After I sat in my car and felt the cold edge of that night carve itself into me, something shifted. Pain was still there, a low hum in my chest, but under it a calm clarity formed, like frost cracking into clean, hard ice. Revenge, I decided, wouldn't be a tantrum. It would be surgical. First rule, evidence over emotion. If I wanted them to crumble, I couldn't rely on theatrics alone. I needed proof, paper trails, receipts, witnesses, digital breadcrumbs, the kind of clean, undeniable facts that would expose their little performance for the staged farce it was. I started small and quiet. Caroline, the event planner, had been kind. She owed me the truth of the transactions. I called her under the pretense of wanting feedback for future events and listened, patient as a radar. Her voice softened when she mentioned the contract, the deposit, the band deposit wired last minute, all in my name. I asked for the invoice copies. She emailed them before lunch, the PDFs like ammunition in my inbox. Next, the bank statements. I printed every page, my late-night transfers, the confirmation emails with golden lettered headers. Each line was a small victory: Marriott Grand Ballroom, $12,000, New Orleans Jazz Band, $6,500, catering, $4,300. $25,000 spelled out in black and white. I held those pages like a map. Then I dug into the social angle. Families hide their cruelties in gossip and plausible lies, they perform them for an audience. I scrolled through the group chats, the one labeled family events where my siblings swapped memes and polite lies. There it was, a message from Chris 2 weeks before the party that said, "Don't worry about Eliza, she's always overdramatic. We're keeping it intimate." The time-stamped cruelty felt colder than the night my father disowned me. I called an old friend of my mother's, a woman named Ruth who'd always been kind to me in small ways, a phone call that was casual but precise. Ruth remembered the invitation list and mentioned someone else had helped cover the venue, an odd phrasing that suddenly framed my generosity as a mistake to be corrected rather than a gift. I recorded the conversation, legally, in my state, and saved it. My plan grew in the quiet hours of the week. I sketched a timeline on a whiteboard. Phase 1, assemble irrefutable documents, done. Phase 2, plant seeds that would force public acknowledgement. Phase 3, deliver the reveal where it hurt most, where their reputation and pride were polished and on display. I walked through the scenarios in my head, playing each like pieces on a chessboard. Would I confront them at home? Too private. Email them? Too easy for them to gaslight. No, it needed to be public, undeniable, and humiliating in the way they prized most, in front of their friends, neighbors, their social circle that fed their vanity. So I booked a small ad in the local lifestyle magazine, a tasteful half-page, nothing flashy, that would appear in circulation the week after the anniversary. The copy was clinical, almost sterile, paid event services provided by Eliza Hart, see receipts and vendor confirmations at elizapays.com. Beneath it, a QR code that linked to a simple website I built that morning, scanned, readable, downloadable proof. I rehearsed the moment I imagined the town would scan that code, the polite smiles dissolving into surprise, then anger, then the awkwardness of people who realized they'd participated in a lie. I could already feel my breath shorten at the thought, that precise icy thrill of justice approaching. I did one more thing. I signed up for the Neighborhood Association's upcoming Community Spotlight, where my parents loved to parade as patrons of culture. I submitted a short comment asking the organizer to include them in the Patrons of the Month feature, a gentle setup. The moment the magazine ran, the association would get the link, the social circle would get the link, and the story would no longer be mine alone to hold. It would be public property. At night, I sat with the stack of documents under my lamp. My hands didn't shake like they had the first night. Instead, they were steady. The anger had become a tool, sharp, focused. I wasn't doing this to be cruel, I was doing it to be seen. Because if they could erase me in a ballroom, I could make the whole town read the bill. And when the spotlight finally turned, the only thing left for them to do would be to account for what they'd done. The week after I launched the half-page ad, every tiny sound felt amplified, my phone's buzz, the creak of the mailbox, the distant clink of forks in neighboring dining rooms. I told myself to stay calm. That was part of the plan, to appear unaffected while the world did the unraveling for me. It started slow. A text from Ruth popped up mid-morning, "Have you seen the magazine?" That QR code, oh my. I smiled and sipped my coffee like it was any other day. Then my phone lit up with a string of emails from vendors, Caroline confirming receipt of the printed contracts, the band leader forwarding a message he'd received from a friend who'd scanned the code, even the Marriott sent a short, neutral note confirming the booking and the invoice number. Each one arrived like a nail in a frame, tidy, irreversible. The QR sent people to a small, unadorned page I'd built. No drama. Just a header, event services paid by Eliza Hart, and below it downloadable PDFs, contracts, bank confirmations, and an audio clip of my call with Caroline. I kept the tone clinical because rage looks best when trimmed of melodrama. Facts don't sound like revenge, they sound like truth. Then the town did what small towns do, it talked. A neighbor scanned the code and posted a screenshot in the community Facebook group. Someone else shared it in a private WhatsApp chain. The screenshot spread like a quiet spill of ink. Comments popped up, "I didn't know, why would they hide that? Is this for real?" The polite veneers my parents cultivated started to show hairline cracks. My phone rang. It was Lily. Her voice was thin. "Eliza, Mom called. She's upset. Can we talk?" I let it ring. I wanted them to come to me, to stumble through explanations in my presence if they dared. They never did. Instead, my father texted, short, clipped, "Call me." I didn't. I waited. That wait was deliberate. Discomfort is a pressure that forces people to act poorly. Let them act poorly. In the days that followed, I watched them rush. Invitations were rescinded, casual acquaintances were quietly called and asked to keep the magazine quiet. My brother called our aunt and asked her to delete a forwarded post. The language they used when scrambling was telling, defensive, flippant, full of the same casual cruelty they'd used on me at the party. "It was a misunderstanding," my father wrote in one message. "Eliza paid? That's absurd." They tried to contain a spread of evidence. The problem was, evidence doesn't fold like a napkin, it replicates. Copies were downloaded. PDFs were forwarded. Screenshots doubled and tripled. People who'd been at the party started to message me privately, apologizing, confessing they'd assumed my paperwork was a courtesy mistake and not real. I started receiving invitations I hadn't asked for. "Coffee? Let's clear the air. Come to brunch." They wanted to fix the optics. They wanted the story back in the safe, edited version where no one looked bad. But I had no intention of allowing edits. At night, I'd sit at my kitchen table with a lamp and the stack of downloaded files. The lamp cast a small circle of light, everything else fell away. I felt the strange mix of vindication and sorrow, vindication because the truth was finally getting an audience, sorrow because it had taken public humiliation for them to be unmasked. The next move would force them into a corner they couldn't charm their way out of. I had one more place to plant the seed, a forum where their pride was on display and the people they wanted to impress would be watching. I closed my laptop and took a breath. The calm before the storm is still a calm, but it hums with a coming rush. The community spotlight evening arrived like a slow, polite tide, a room full of linen-covered tables, champagne flutes tinkling, and people who polished their reputations with the same care they polished their cufflinks. My parents loved nights like this. They were on the committee, framed in glossy photos on the organization's website, the smiling faces who liked to be seen as benefactors. I sat at the back, in an unremarkable navy dress, my hair pulled into a low knot. It was deliberately boring, invisible clothes make the eye rest on the face. I watched them from across the room. Dad laughed too loudly at a joke. Mom preened like a woman used to being admired. The MC stepped up to the podium to announce the patrons of the month. The hall hushed, forks resting mid-bite. And tonight, the MC said, voice smooth as velvet, we honor Margaret and Dennis Carter, pillars of our community. Polite applause. My palms were cool against the program in my hand. I felt nothing like triumph. I felt a clinical focus, the same tightness surgeons get before an incision. I had rehearsed what would happen next until it came out in my sleep, the moment a polite, curated life met an unarguable record. Halfway through their speech, a practiced, saccharine thank you, the lights flickered. Heads turned. Someone muttered about a projector issue. The MC smiled, made a joke, then his smile cracked. The event screen had been seized by the simplest thing I'd made, my webpage landing page, full screen, event services paid by Eliza Hart. The room went quiet, like the pause before a storm's first thunder. Slowly, the downloadable PDF started cycling across the screen, bank confirmations, invoices, the deposit transfer with my name. The projector showed the audio waveform from my call with Caroline. The MC blinked, looking helplessly at the tech volunteer, who sheepishly shrugged. Someone in the front row whispered, "What is that?" My father's face changed color. For a second he looked like a man seeing himself in a mirror painted by someone else. The cracks in the gloss were suddenly visible. My mother's hands trembled as they reached for her napkin, eyes hunting for an ally who would help her stitch the narrative back together. There was no ally. There was only the white rectangle of evidence, impossible to dismiss. From my seat, I watched them try to recover. Dad mouthed, "Eliza, stop." Mom's smile collapsed into a thin line. Chris' jaw tightened, for the first time all evening his confidence wavered. People leaned forward, phones already pointed to the screen, cameras capturing the moment the curated life collided with facts. "Is this some kind of joke?" someone near the podium asked. A neighbor frowned. I thought this was a community night, not a family spat. The MC, flustered, stepped back and cleared his throat. He tried the old scripts, technical difficulties, prank, but no one wanted to let it go. The newspaper's favorite ingredient, scandal, had already been plated. Conversations clustered like birds, urgent and excited. I heard my name in whispers, then the phrase that had been my tombstone at the party, "She paid?" This time it did not sound derisive. It sounded astonished. My chest loosened in a way that surprised me. The plan wasn't petty, it was precise. Watching them scramble, watching their carefully maintained social currency leak, was a quiet, slow unmaking far worse than a shout. They had banked their identity on admiration and polite lies, now the ledger was public. When the lights came back, the MC apologized and tried to move on, but movement felt impossible. People opened their phones and began to download. The polite hum of the room had become a low, insistent ripple. I could see my mother bite her lip until it whitened. My father's smile had been filed away forever. And as the ripple spread, I felt something else, not revenge's heat so much as the flat, steady light of justice finally hitting where it mattered most, in front of everyone who once pretended my kindness was invisible. In the days after the community spotlight, the silence was deafening. No calls, no texts, no carefully worded excuses from my parents. Just absence, a vacuum where their control used to live. But silence, I realized, is louder than any apology when it comes from people who once loved the sound of their own image. The story spread beyond the event. The local paper ran a brief mention: a technical mishap reveals financial dispute at community gala. That was their polite way of saying the Carters got caught lying. Online forums picked it up. People shared screenshots, debated who was right, who was wrong. The details didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the truth could no longer be buried under charm or charity dinners. My brother, Chris, called first. He didn't say sorry. He said, "You didn't have to go that far." I replied quietly, "You went that far the night you erased me." He hung up. Then Lily called. Her voice was smaller this time, unsure. "Mom hasn't been out of the house in 3 days. She says people are avoiding her at the club." I didn't gloat. I just said, maybe she'll think twice before telling her daughter she isn't invited. Lily tried to defend them, then stopped. For the first time, I heard guilt in her silence. 3 days later, my parents showed up at my office. No appointment, no warning. Just them. My father looked older, like the arrogance had been sanded off him overnight. My mother's eyes were puffy, makeup barely concealing it. "Eliza," she began, voice trembling, "this has gone too far. You embarrassed us in front of everyone." I folded my hands and said nothing. I let them feel the echo of what they'd done, the sting of being disregarded. "Why?" my father asked finally. "Why do this?" That word, why, almost made me laugh. I looked him straight in the eyes. "Because you needed to feel what I felt. To be invisible. To have your truth erased in front of a crowd and realize no one's clapping anymore." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. My mother whispered, "We didn't mean to hurt you." I nodded slowly. "But you did. You always did. And the saddest part? You thought I'd never fight back." They didn't stay long. Pride doesn't survive in places where truth lingers. A month later, the magazine editor reached out. They wanted to feature me, not for the scandal, but for my legal charity work that funded local scholarships. For once, my name appeared in print without a shadow hanging over it. I didn't buy copies to show anyone. I didn't need to. Recognition isn't sweet when it's loud, it's sweet when it's finally honest. Sometimes revenge doesn't feel like fire. It feels like still water, reflective, calm, holding the image of what's been burned behind you. I don't speak to my parents anymore. They send polite cards during holidays, thinking of you, hope you're well. I never reply. Not out of spite, but peace. Some stories don't need a sequel. Because the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's showing you were right all along, and walking away with your dignity intact. Sometimes the family that raised you will never see your worth until the world forces them to. And by then, it's too late. So if you've ever been dismissed, disrespected, or told you don't belong, remember Eliza's story. You don't need to beg for respect. Build your peace, and let karma handle the rest. If this story gave you chills, smash that like button and share it with someone who's ever been treated like they weren't enough. Tell me in the comments, what's the most satisfying revenge you've ever witnessed? And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more true stories of betrayal, justice, and redemption, only here on Shadow of Revenge.